Good morning. My name is Brent Tuwamadan, and I am a member of Crossing Crown Lutheran Church in Rancho Cucamonga. And it is my great honor and privilege to be able to present today's Bible study. Now, before we get into the Bible study, I suppose you're probably wondering, where the heck are you? Well, I am up at the Etiwanda Falls as part of the North Etiwanda Preserve. And I thought, we've seen so much of people's houses, their studies, their living rooms, my chair, whatever it happens to be. I thought, let's get out and get into nature and conduct a Bible study right there. So you've got me, you've got this beautiful waterfall behind me, and we're going to be taking a look at Psalm 8. So if you can find that in your Bible, Psalm 8, I'm going to be reading from the New Revised Standard Version, but any version you have is just absolutely fine as well. Here it is. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and infants, you have founded a bulwark because of your foes, to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. Yet you have made them a little lower than God, and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea. Whatever passes along the paths of the sea. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. The psalmist starts by putting God into his place. And what a place that is. Because our God is not just the God of Israel, but all the earth. In ancient times, there were gods all over the place. There were storm gods and there were river gods. There were gods of war, there were gods of love. There were gods of the seas and gods of the forests. Gods of the mountains and gods of the valleys. And every tribe seemed to have their own gods as well. There were Egyptian gods. The Greeks and Romans both had their gods, as did the Assyrians and the Babylonians. The Israelites, though, had the audacity to say that there was only one God, that their God was the one true God, and that all the other gods that people worshipped were essentially bunk. He is the God of every people. But even that isn't enough to adequately describe God. So not only is God the God of all the earth, he is also the God of the heavens, the sun and the moon and the stars, everything that he has made. But the psalmist doesn't even stop there. He is beyond the heavens. I am always reminded when I am thinking about God and all his majesty and glory. One of my favorite verses, Micah 6:8, which says, I have told you, O man, what is good. And what is it that the Lord requires of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And it's that last part, walking humbly. When you think of God and all of his creation and the majesty of it, how can you do anything but be humbled? Then, in contrast to this, the psalmist changes gears. Because as big and grand and majestic and powerful as God is, he is just as much the God of the small things, the weak things. That's right, even the smallest and weakest of things have power in the hands of God. It was the cartoonist Walt Kelly who wrote, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." It's interesting, sitting out here in nature, he actually wrote that for the very first Earth Day 50 years ago in 1970. He recognized we are our own worst enemy. But this is something that I thought about when I read that out of the mouths of babes and infants, you have founded a bulwark against the enemy. For those of us that are parents, what was it like the first time you held your child in your arms? Were you filled with energy and anger and rage and feel like you wanted to go into battle? Or was there a sense of calm and stillness where everything just made sense and was right in the world? And even now, when you look into their eyes, don't you want to give them everything that you had in life and more? Don't you want to leave this world a better place for them? Yes, even now, our children, the babes and infants, are a bulwark against our own worst nature. So then the psalmist looks at creation, and he looks at himself, and he looks at mankind, and he asks a question that so many of us have probably asked ourselves. In comparison to all of this, what am I? And he answers his own question. I am nothing. I am insignificant. I'm such a small part of this. I am not worthy. This is pretty easy for us to do today, isn't it? I mean, we are not worthy. We have seen what has happened with the death of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and we have seen the rioting and the looting. Many of us have looked inside of ourselves and seen things that we don't like. Those hints of racism that are still there, even though we try to suppress them. We are at each other's throats. All of us. I cannot remember a time when the political parties were more at odds. They seem to just be screaming at each other. It seems like we are filled with nothing but fear and hate and anger and distrust and envy. And yet, God sees us differently. God sees us as special. You see, the psalmist could have said that we, mankind, is just a little bit above the animals. But he didn't do that. He said, we are just a little bit below God, or a little bit below the angels, depending on what translation you are looking at. We have been crowned with honor and glory. And then the psalmist reflects back on the creation story in Genesis. He states that we have dominion over all the earth, the animals, the fish, the birds, all creation. Dominion, though, dominion doesn't mean that we are the masters of creation, that we should strive to crush it under our feet. Dominion in this case means that we are not in bondage to creation. Think about it. Of all God's creation, who has control over their world, over their environment? Who is it that can create not only their own place in the world, but manage creation so that it can continue to thrive. We don't always do it. We probably never do it as well as we could, but at least we have the ability to do that. And then, after all this reflection, the psalmist goes right back to where he started. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all of the earth. Let's go ahead and close in prayer. Lord, your name is indeed majestic in all the earth. You are above all things. You live in and with and through all things, including us. We know that we ourselves don't live up to our best nature. Too often we find the basest part of ourselves, and that's what we show to the world. Help us, heal us, guide us. Let us be the people that you envisioned for us. Let us be in dominion over the land, the creation that you have created. Let us be just a little bit less than the angels. We ask you to protect us and move us forward in your strength and your love. How majestic is your name in all of the earth. Amen.